So we are getting close to the release of Poppy Playtime Chapter 3, and the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is learning more about the lore and the story of Playtime Co. Chapters 1 and 2 gave us plenty to theorize over, and there are still plenty of unsolved mysteries throughout the game. So here are my top 5 unsolved mysteries in Poppy Playtime, the ones that I hope we get some answers for in Chapter 3. Number 1. Why was someone so afraid of Poppy? In Chapter 2 we got to meet Poppy, and we briefly worked with her while we tried to escape. What's very odd about this though, is that up until the end of the chapter, Poppy seemed very sweet and helpful, mostly playful if nothing else. But back in Chapter 1 we got a clue that something wasn't quite right about her. Remember the Huggy chase scene? All the way through the vents we could see warnings scribbled on the sides. Turn back, stop. Someone didn't want us coming this way. This came to a head when we finally found the Poppy door. All around the outside were warnings to stay away. It seemed like someone was afraid of Poppy. But why? At the end of Chapter 2, Poppy does betray us. She denies our escape by turning the train tracks to keep us in the factory. But she says she's doing it to set things right.
I had so much time to think and reflect. Time to figure out exactly what I would do when free. We'll set things right. Terrible things have happened. But I know that whatever I need you to do, you're capable.
She tells us that horrible things have happened here, and aside from taking our choice away from us, it doesn't seem like she has evil intentions. It seems more like she's going to use us to stop the bad things from happening. But that still doesn't explain why someone is so afraid of Poppy. My current theory on this one is that Poppy has 2 personalities. We saw that both Huggy Wuggy and Mommy Longlegs almost had dual personalities. They both seem to lose control at one point or another. They both seem to have a darker side, if you will. My best bet is that Poppy has a darker side too, another personality that takes over, and I'm willing to bet that this personality is pure evil. It's very interesting that we haven't seen a darker version of Poppy yet, considering that all the pre-release trailers seem to hint to this. I wonder why Mob haven't shown this yet. I'm willing to bet that's because Poppy is one of the most evil characters in the game. However, that is just speculation right now. Until we get our hands on Chapter 3 and learn more about Poppy, we should consider ourselves warned. Number 2, is Huggy Wuggy still alive? This one was teased in Chapter 2 and has led to a lot of debate among the theory community. Huggy Wuggy was the first big bad that we encountered in Playtime Co in Chapter 1, but after a pretty terrifying vent chase, we quite literally dropped Huggy Wuggy into the depths. It really did look like it hurt too. But if you thought this was the end of this big blue boy, then think again. In Chapter 2 we can find traces of blue fur and whatever this red liquid that came out of Huggy was. I still don't know whether this is blood or poppy gel mixture, but either way we know that it came out of Huggy when he collided with the pipes on the way down. I think this means one of 2 things. Either Experiment 1006 went down there and dragged Huggy back up to use in his experiments, like he did with Mommy Longlegs at the end of Chapter 2, or Huggy was still alive and he dragged himself back up. I'm personally leaning towards Huggy still being alive. After all, we saw him take some pretty nasty knocks on the way down, and he was still conscious as he fell. After all, we can hear him screaming. Plus, we don't exactly know what Huggy is made out of, but looking at the prototype and the sound that Huggy makes when he collides with the metal pipe, I'm willing to bet he has a metal frame underneath all of that fur. It's absolutely possible that Huggy survived that fall, although he might be a little bit damaged. Think of the FNAF animatronics as a reference. It also seems a shame that we've barely had any time with Huggy in Chapter 1, which was incredibly short, especially since Huggy seems like the mascot of Playtime Co. We even see that Mob continually uses him, even dedicating a whole video to his escape. No, I really don't think this is the last we've seen of Huggy Wuggy, and what's worse, I think he's going to be very angry when we meet him again. Number 3, why was MISSY friendly? We got our first glimpse of the living MISSY in Chapter 2. She showed up, looked at us, opened the door for us, and then left. Not really much to go on, but this has led to many people speculating why she was included like this in the first place. It seemed very out of place. Why did she seem to help us and then not chase us like most of the other living dolls in this factory? Well, I actually think there is a massive clue that many, myself included, may have overlooked, and that clue actually comes from Huggy. Right near the end of Chapter 2 we get a VHS tape that gives us some more information on 2 of the experiments, 1006, the prototype, and 1170, Huggy Wuggy. The description of Huggy specifically states that he has
maximum obedience,
something that might have seemed inconsequential. But after watching the video of his escape, I noticed something odd. If Huggy is so obedient, why did he escape the factory and cause several casualties of the security staff that tried to bring him back? That doesn't seem very obedient now, does it? In fact, that seems pretty much the opposite. Unless he was obeying someone else. I actually think that Huggy is obeying Experiment 1006 in this moment. In fact, I think this escape was planned by 1006 to distract the security staff. After all, we know 1006 is incredibly resourceful and tricked a staff member into entering his room. It's clear that he wanted to escape. My theory so far on how the factory fell was that 1006 escaped and turned on the staff members, but it sounds much more like Huggy Wuggy that we can hear in the background as the staff are screaming on the scientist VHS tape.
same mistake won't be made twice. Any future...
I think 1006 used Huggy Wuggy as his enforcer. Huggy is being obedient, just not to the staff anymore. This would also explain why Huggy didn't try to kill us at the beginning of Chapter 1, he was waiting for instructions. Perhaps 1006 told him to let us in order to open doors that he couldn't get through without a grab pack hand. So how does this relate to KISSY MISSY? Well, if Huggy was obedient, it seems likely that his counterpart KISSY would be too. After all, the scientist did say that maximum obedience was the most favourable outcome, especially since we now know that the Bigger Bodies initiative was, at least partly, set up to replace paid human staff with unpaid dolls. So then, KISSY MISSY opened the door on someone else's orders. Whose orders though? Mommy Longlegs, Poppy, or someone else? I think this could go one of two ways. Either KISSY is working alongside Huggy Wuggy with 1006 and he wanted us to proceed to kill Mommy Longlegs for him, or there is another faction at play in the factory. Perhaps one who will be more friendly to us and less friendly to 1006. Or maybe she was just playing with us and she's gonna try and eat us later, like Huggy did. Only time will tell, but my money is definitely on the fact that KISSY isn't working alone, and I can't wait to see her again in Chapter 3 to figure out who she's working with. Number 4, who exactly is Experiment 1006? 1006 has been one of the most mysterious entities in the game so far. During Chapter 1, many people were under the impression that Huggy Wuggy was 1006. One of the few things that I did get right was that 1006 would be much more complicated. We don't know much about him, but we do know that he doesn't require sustenance, and that he's incredibly intelligent. He seems to be very resourceful, able to create a laser pointer from a digital clock. You could call him very crafty. Even more alarming though, okay, these puns are getting out of control, is that he is noted as being incredibly willing to cause violence and is not above tricking staff members to get to them. His name, the Prototype, implies that he was the first of his kind, and my bet was that he was the first experiment in the Bigger Bodies initiative. Although, judging by his unfinished claw, I'm willing to bet that that experiment was a failure. Something clearly went wrong, otherwise they would have made him look like a doll like the rest of the experiments. So, who could 1006 be? The most popular theory at the moment is Elliot Ludwig, and this does honestly make sense. He was described as being a visionary, and I bet he had a heavy hand in the creation of toys too. We can see blueprints on his desk in Chapter 2, and as the founder of the company, I bet he did have a massive creative side. So it's possible that Ludwig's ingenuity carried over after the experimental process. His willingness to cause violence, though, would be a departure from descriptions of Elliot Ludwig. He was always described as being very kind, wanting to bring joy to children. Although the loss of a loved one and the loss of his wife, combined with being transferred into a non-organic body, might have pushed him over the edge. It definitely does seem like all of these experiments have some sort of psychological problem, which probably is no surprise. Another possibility is that the jumbled mess of letters we found in Chapter 2 spells out the name of 1006. And no, it's not Jamie B. Honey, by the way, there's not enough E's. But this name was the only one that was hidden. Well, why? We don't know yet, so this one's still a possibility. I've theorized previously that 1006 could be Leith Pierre, since he definitely seems to have an aggressive personality, but the timeline makes that unlikely. I still think we're going to see Leith in doll form eventually though, and I'm excited to see that one. So the identity of 1006 is still a big mystery, and I bet it's going to be a big twist reveal in a future chapter. Number 5, who do we play as? My final entry on this list is exactly who is the protagonist. The playable character is almost as mysterious as 1006. They never speak, they barely react to anything that happens in the game, and all we know about them is that they are an ex-employee, although, again, we don't really know what that means. It's entirely possible that Mob wanted to keep the protagonist faceless, an empty shell, an unimportant character to push the story along. But judging by just how far the devs have gone to build this world, I really don't see that being the case. In fact, even after Chapter 1, my first instinct was that this was going to be a Bioshock-style plot twist. In this case though, the protagonist being a part of the Bigger Bodies initiative. My main points of evidence for this were the fact that the death screens seemed to be very odd for a human. A static VHS tape with someone talking to us seems a little bit odd. After all, we know that experiments were incredibly advanced. Poppy and Mummy Longlegs seem to be just as intelligent as humans. There is nothing to say that the later experiments didn't go even more advanced. Perhaps Playtime Co. were getting closer to a realistic human-style doll. Remember, we've been down here for a long time with no food nor water. Until we get some more clues in Chapter 3, all bets are off. It also seems really odd that anyone would come to a factory alone after it's been abandoned for 10 years with the staff all disappearing. Surely any sane person would call the police, unless they knew something about what happened here. So my best two guesses right now are that the playable character is either a doll or one of the higher-ups of the company. After all, Mummy Longlegs did recognize us, which means we had likely been in the lower sections of the factory, since we know Mummy Longlegs was confined down there, which also means that we likely know exactly what was happening inside the factory. Either way, for now we have almost no information on who the protagonist is. We have plenty of candidates on who it could be, and I think it would be a massive shame if the playable character was a complete nobody. So those are just some of the unsolved mysteries in Poppy Playtime. I absolutely cannot wait for Chapter 3 and beyond so we can figure some of these out, and I'm sure Chapter 3 is going to raise even more mysteries for us to theorize over. So if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a like and consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my Chapter 3 videos. I will be making more before the game comes out, and of course I'll be making loads when Chapter 3 is finally here. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.